Is it possible for this one game to have a big impact on the NFL for the next 12 to 15 years? I will get to that a little later. But we begin with the end of a journey. A journey that began about 22, 23 weeks ago, where all 32 teams began their quest to hoist the Lombardi Trophy at SoFi Stadium on February the 13th. And we are down to our final two teams. Representing the NFC, we have the Rams. Representing the AFC, we have the Bengals. And this is a very unique matchup, in my opinion, as we have two teams that had two different journeys getting here. For the Rams, this is a team that many people thought would make the Super Bowl, as they were a quarterback away from becoming legitimate contenders. And they traded for Matthew Stafford last January by giving up some first-round picks. And then later in the year, right before the trade deadline, they traded for Von Miller to add him to a already very talented and intimidating Rams defense. And later on in the season, after his fallout with the Cleveland Browns, the Rams signed Odell Beckham Jr. For the Bengals, they are a team that nobody expected them to be here. Although there is one person that I know that expected them and knew they would be at the Super Bowl, and that is a content creator by the name of YouTube Brackets. He has been in my comment section throughout the years, so go check out his content. I will leave his channel name. I will leave the link to his channel in the description box down below. He said back in June that the Bengals were going to make the Super Bowl. And the Bengals, they have defied expectations. Well, to say they defied expectations, that can be a real understatement for them. Because the Bengals, they've been a good team all throughout the year. Yes, they did have a couple of downs, but the Bengals, they could have started the season off 8-0. They were that good throughout the year. They were a not pick six away from Joe Burrow from beating the Bears in week 2. They were a missed field goal away from beating the Packers. And they had a bad game against the Jets, but they had a significant lead in that game, and it looked like they were going to get that win, but they gave it away at the very end. So the Bengals, they could have started off the year 8-0. And they had a couple bad games after that. They had a bad game against the Browns where they lost, I believe it was by a score of 41-16. And then I believe they ended up getting smoked by the Chargers at some point later on that season. But what I think the turning point for the Bengals was in this season was the Week 16 matchup against the Ravens, where Joe Burrow had 525 passing yards in that game and 4 touchdowns. He could have had a 5th touchdown pass, but it got overturned. Because in the next week, Joe Burrow followed it up with 446 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. He was so close to having a rushing touchdown that game. But those matchups in week 16 and 17 was what I believe was a turning point for the Bengals this season. Now I want to get into some keys to the game. And believe it or not, this is really a simple game plan for both these teams. For the Rams, it's to pressure Joe Burrow, bring the harassment, led by Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and Leonard Floyd. Because a big question mark for the Bengals all season long has been their offensive line. We've seen their offensive line have good moments and bad moments, including giving up 9 sacks to the Titans in the divisional round. But we've seen what happens when Joe Burrow is protected. Big plays can and likely will happen, whether if it's a big play to Jamar Chase or Tyler Boyd or T. Higgins. And the top key for the Bengals is to, of course, protect Joe Burrow. The Rams, They got to utilize their new acquisitions, Matthew Stafford, Von Miller, and Odell Beckham Jr. We've seen Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp be the top duo, the top quarterback receiver duo the entire season. As it turns out that they watched film together, they ate breakfast together every morning, and it's turned into a bonding trust exercise for those two. And the second biggest key for the Bengals is to let a wide receiver other than Cooper Kupp beat you. I think at the end of the day, if you were on the losing end, I think you can be okay with getting beat by Van Jefferson or Odell Beckham Jr. But don't let Cooper Kupp beat you. Although, on the other hand, it has been apparent that nobody can stop or even contain the duo of Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. But if you got to double cover Cooper Kupp, then you just got to do what you got to do. But it's going to open up Van Jefferson and or Odell Beckham Jr. So just by the presence of Cooper Kupp, significant advantage for the Rams. Now I have 4 key matchups within the game that I think are going to have a direct impact into deciding who's going to win this game. And I'm going to start off with the matchup that I think is the most important one. And that is the Bengals offensive line versus the Rams defensive line. As the top key for the Bengals to win this game is protecting Joe Burrow. Because we know how talented Aaron Donald is. Aaron Donald, in my opinion, is the defensive player of the year. And by adding in Von Miller in the middle of the year, just his presence alone makes the Rams defensive line a lot more intimidating. Now, the second biggest key matchup within this matchup, in my opinion, is T. Higgins versus the Rams secondary. Because Jamar Chase is going to be going up against Jalen Ramsey all night long. So for the Bengals to win this game, I think T. Higgins is going to have a big game. Then leading into that, Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey, that's the third biggest matchup in this game. And Cooper Kupp versus the Bengals secondary. Those 4 matchups within the matchup is going to have a direct impact on this game and who's going to win this game. And how about the running backs we have in this matchup? Cam Akers for the Rams. He tore his Achilles in the preseason. Wasn't expected to play at all this season. But he came back in Week 18. He saw some action, and he has seen some action in the playoffs. But he has not practiced all week long. So we'll see how effective he's going to be in this matchup. And for the Bengals, Joe Mixon has had a great bounce-back season. After missing the majority of the year last year with an injury, he came back and he's been one of the better running backs in the National Football League. And now it is time for what everybody has been waiting for, and that is my prediction. Now remember at the beginning of the video, when I thought it was possible, or how I asked if it is possible, that this one game is going to have the potential of having a big impact on the NFL for the next 12 to 15 years. And here is where that question comes into play. Tom Brady retired this week. And is it possible that the NFL is molding Joe Burrow into being the next Tom Brady? And what's interesting about this is that Tom Brady's career began in the same way that Joe Burrow's is starting to take the form. In his first playoff game, Tom Brady got a win over the Raiders in controversy. And what happened in these playoffs? The Bengals, led by Joe Burrow, in his first playoff game against the Raiders, he came out with a win in controversy. And later on in the playoffs, Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl, pulling off the upset against the Rams, also known as the greatest show on turf. Now, is this Rams team the greatest show on turf? No. Are they the reincarnated version of the greatest show on turf? No, but I can understand why you think that. I mean, Matthew Stafford is a veteran quarterback, talented quarterback. The Rams are averaging about 27 points per game, but the greatest show on turf was averaging over 31 points per game. So they're not on the same level as the greatest show on turf. Cooper Kupp having one of the best receiving seasons that we've ever seen for a wide receiver. But the difference between the greatest show on turf and this Rams team is the Rams had great running back play with Marshall Faulk. And the Rams running backs, they're not even close to the level that Marshall Faulk was at. But when you look at this matchup on paper, you would assume to pick the Rams. You would assume to pick the Rams to win by about maybe 2 touchdowns. Because I think that's how much better the Rams appear on paper than the Bengals. Because the Rams got the better defense on paper, got the better offense on paper. But the game isn't won on paper, it's won on the field. And the Bengals, they have an underrated defense. A defense that doesn't really get talked about as much. Because we are mainly focused on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, C.J. Uzomah. But this defense, led by Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, Jesse Bates, Eli Apple, most underrated defense in the league, and nobody's talking about them. But I think this Bengals defense is going to keep the Bengals in this game from start to finish. And right now the Rams are a 4-point favorite. But if you were picking this based off paper, the line could go up to the Rams being more than a touchdown favorite, maybe even a 2-touchdown favorite. But I think that the Bengals will pull off the upset and they will win Super Bowl 56 by a score of 24-20. So that is my prediction for Super Bowl 56. Comment your prediction down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, have a wonderful day.